My name is Braden Gouveia. I'm a graduate student at the Department of Spanish and Portuguese at Vanderbilt University, and today I'm going to submit my third language Panda project. And I was thinking about these three projects I've produced so far, and I've noticed a slight pattern. My first Panda project for a language classroom, I thought of having students create content with a caption contest. My second project was having students create content in which they had to think of actions and moments or experiences that they have that we've all shared that don't have words in the dictionary. And this third project I'm thinking of, the one I'm recording right now, has to do with podcasting. And the idea is that students, you don't have to publish a recording over the internet. That's perfectly fine. I would like to teach students how that's possible. It's not as difficult as it seems, and people can do this with just their telephone or with just a computer, and very little editing skills at all, if any. The idea is that the students can read their own audio as a text and edit out the ums, the okays, the so's, and the awkward pauses as if it was a written prose. And I think when they do that, they have to listen to themselves, maybe re-record. And if they're writing a prose script, they have to write the script, edit the script, read and pronounce the script well, and maybe do that a number of times. And then once they have their audio, they can then edit even more those ums and pauses and okays and the so's that we hear and that we say even in our native language. I might just call this project podcasting. It could just as well be called oratory. What does this include? I mentioned I would like to do this where each student does their own. You can have a group though, but if each student had their own, and if it wasn't extemporaneous, then the speech would be written first like a TED Talk. And they could polish that and then read that. And so you have the writing and the reading in the same activity. Clearly there's speaking involved. Listening is an important concept because they hear their own audio bit and decide if they want to keep it or re-record it or record a segment in bits. In the first 20 seconds they talk about this, then they'll transition to this, and they could do that in different recordings and combine them together. It will take reading if they, like I said, if they're not speaking extemporaneously, they will have a script and they'll be reading it. And it could include culture if the prompt that you assign your students has them discuss content relating to Latin American culture or Spain. That's very possible. In my example, it's just going to be Spanish for my class. The duration of the project, this could be, I would give the students a few days to a week, or as a final project or weekly project. That's perfectly fine. I will include a number of URLs that I have that I want to share. Websites, and Anchor is the one I want to describe today. This is a great video on how to use Anchor to edit out moments in your speech that you don't want to include in the final project. That's very useful in second language studies and even in your native language. I will also include a link to this website that teaches you how to edit out those moments in your speech using something other than GarageBand, which is free for Mac users, and something other than Anchor. And Anchor is owned by Spotify. And it's through this website that students can create podcasts and submit them to distribute them on Google or Apple or Spotify. But that won't be part of the class credit or the assignment points. But it's very interesting and very important to teach students how to use these tools, because a lot of people are making podcasts on all kinds of topics. And that is just maybe a skill beyond just the Spanish speaking itself that I'd like to teach my students. Patrick Murphy at Vanderbilt already submitted a Panda project video describing how to use Flipgrid. I want to mention this project. This project was great for my class. My students had to record themselves with video and audio and view it before submitting it to the class. And students received a lot of practice. Now, they only had one recording to do. If something happened in the middle, they had to start over, which was, let me say, good practice. but they couldn't edit anything and they had to see themselves, which there's good to this too, of course. I want to go in a different direction and help them edit and listen to their audio that way. But I like both of these so much. I would use both of these in my class. Things to consider when using a podcast approach in the language classroom. You could do audio only or audio and video. There's a website I want to share. I don't have it open right now, that allows you to record video better than Zoom does, and in ways that lets you edit in ways that I would like to do. You can have a student do a project alone, as a group, or with the instructor. I would like to do that, be in a group with students and have a part to play. It would be very extemporaneous. It might not be scripted, like a TED Talk or a joint TED Talk, but we could do a discussion and record it with students. That'd be fun. I've already described the pros and cons of doing a scripted project or extemporaneous, which, like I said, Patrick's Flipgrid project presentation would be great for that. How many recurring files per semester? I mentioned this earlier too. I would do a number. I would do more than one. This would be a great final project, but it shouldn't be the only time a student does this, I would say. It depends on the level of the class. I would do a couple a semester at the least. And if it's my first time, or if it's a lower level class, then maybe one as a final project would be great. What is not my aim in this? My aim is not to, is the kind of, what I would consider success in this kind of assignment is not what a podcaster would define success for him or her. A professional podcaster would define success as finding more people to listen to their podcast, more subscribers, more listeners, and monetizing their podcasts. Those are things that are not relevant to the language teaching class per se. I would like to teach students how easy it is to get into this. I can't teach them how to find listeners, but I can teach them how all this happens. And like I said, my aim is not so that students share this content to anyone in the world using a podcast app. They could simply send you an email, or using a Dropbox, they could send the link to you that way, and it stays internal in the class, which is probably what I would be doing in my case. What is my aim, however, if a student produces this content alone? Well, they would have an exercise in Latin would be inventio. I think that's how you pronounce it. I don't know how to pronounce it. But in oratory, classic oratory, that is the idea, is creating content before you speak, before you stand in front of a crowd, before you edit, before you think of what parts of my speech will focus on what thing. You have to decide what is the topic. I think that's exercise in thinking. And this has to do with the 3 points I said at the beginning of this presentation, that I tend to focus on projects that are content focused, where students create language. Not think of, and so it's also an exercise in writing. If it's not extemporaneous and they're writing a prompt, I think that's important to write, to edit that, and then to read their own writing out loud, and there is pronunciation in that, and then there's the editing of the audio. I've already mentioned the pronunciation, exercise in audio presentation. Listening to oneself is a practice that I think it's hard to do. It is hard to do in any language, I have to say. When you hear errors that you otherwise wouldn't hear and notice, but here you get to manually edit those errors out. The pauses, the ums, the okays, the so's, the filler words. You can delete a 20-second chunk and re-record that the way you like and put it in the file where it needs to be, and that's the file. I think that's kind of amazing if in a Spanish language class or any language class. And I said you could deliver an audio file to an email. If it's not a formal podcast, you could deliver an audio file through an email or through any file, and it will be the best audio file they can produce at that time. And yes, it's been edited. I'm not talking about fixing the frequencies or the speed, not at all. But this is technically the best audio file they can produce at the time. And if they hear that, that should give them a lot of confidence. And I think this would be a great activity. If you wanted to go the route of producing a real podcast, you can use Canva. Where's Canva? Daniel Dorval produced the Language Panda project on our website on how to use Canva for a different activity. But websites such as Anchor Anchor allows you to use Canva to create content like this, an art that would be for your podcast. Now, that wouldn't be necessary if you didn't produce a podcast, but it's interesting step for students to make if they were going to do the whole process. Think of what kind of art would they want to as the cover of their podcast. Now, what is my aim if students produce this content in a group? They would have a different exercise. It would be an exercise in conversation skills. Not the same. These aren't the same as presentational oratory skills. And again, I would use Flipgrid, or maybe not Flipgrid, but Flipgrid would be great for extemporaneous speech. And so it really doesn't get the point that I want to get across in this activity. So having students in group would be hard. What are the risks of having students make content like this as a group? Different levels of expression would make some difficulties in the conversation flow. That's why I wanted to focus on each student one at a time. But if there were multiple students in a group, I would ask the students to create a script for each person, and that makes it so that one person speaks at a time, but you still have multiple voices going back and forth in the audio. What the students don't need for this kind of activity, you don't need a new microphone, you don't need a microphone stand, and you don't need a course in audio editing. I will include a YouTube video that explains how to use Anchor, the app that I'm describing and I would use in my class, because you could produce podcasts over the internet using just your phone or just your computer. And here's in this one point right here, he's at 10 minutes and 30 seconds. This YouTuber is describing how to edit out a segment of speech that you want to take out. And you could do that without any editing experience. You just need to become familiar with how to edit that little bit and delete it. And I think that's a fascinating tool for a language classroom. What they will need is a smartphone or a computer. And the websites that students will use, I will send a link in the description to this video right here on how to do all of this on Anchor. And on Anchor, you only have to use a phone or a computer. You can add art. Like I said, it is free, which is the most important thing for our students. The shared product can be sent directly to Google, Apple, or Spotify for people to search as a real podcast, but that's not necessary. What I would do is use social media, email, or text to send the file, but not over the internet to the whole world unless you want to. You can record audio with other classmates, and Anchor.fm allows students to insert interludes, sounds, intro and outro music with using just their phone or the computer, and it's free and it's very intuitive. And something that I wouldn't do, but I would show students how to do, is if they were to produce a real podcast with different episodes in the future or during the duration of our class, I would show them how to set up the monetization to technically, I guess, in theory, make money off of their podcast. I would think it'd be worthwhile showing students how easy it is and how to do that, but not exactly so that they can make money using our activity. That's not the point. This is what I would like to explain today using my language Panda activity today. And I will include the links to how to use this is Audacity. This is something someone could use if they want to edit audio on their computer. They could use this. If they have a Mac, they could use GarageBand. This is for anybody with any computer. I will include links to these programs in my Language Panda project. But I hope this has been useful. I will be using this in a future class, and thank you so much.